Today, we're resetting our sights on one of the greatest historical puzzles of all time. What really happened to the legendary Library of Alexandria? This was a place that once held the collective knowledge of the ancient world, a beacon of learning and discovery that then vanished. So, grab your curiosity and settle in, because this story is packed with history, science, and some truly surprising twists. Let's travel back in time, over 2,300 years ago, to the bustling city of Alexandria in ancient Egypt. Under the rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a grand vision took shape to build a center of knowledge unlike anything the world had ever seen. This wasn't just a building with shelves, it was a sprawling campus, a research institution, a think tank. Imagine a place housing over 500,000 scrolls. These weren't just books as we know them. They were handwritten papyrus and vellum scrolls containing everything from epic poems and philosophical treatises to groundbreaking scientific discoveries, detailed star charts, and maps of the known world. It was, without a doubt, the Google of the ancient world. Scholars, scientists, and thinkers flocked to Alexandria from all corners of the Mediterranean and beyond. It was here that Eratosthenes first calculated the circumference of the Earth with astounding accuracy. It was here that Euclid wrote his Elements, a work that would define geometry for millennia. They studied astronomy, anatomy, medicine, mathematics, engineering, and even developed early theories about a sun-centered universe. The Library of Alexandria was the intellectual heart of civilization, a place where ideas were born, debated, and preserved for future generations. But here's where the mystery begins. How could such a monumental treasure, a place that held the keys to understanding the ancient mind, simply disappear? Why do we know so little about its final days? The story of its loss is as complex and debated as the knowledge it once contained. Let's start with the most famous and perhaps most cinematic theory. Many people point their fingers at one man, Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, the Roman general arrived in Alexandria in pursuit of his rival, Pompey. He soon found himself entangled in a local civil war. To gain a strategic advantage, Caesar ordered his soldiers to set fire to enemy ships docked in the harbor. The story goes that the fire grew uncontrollably, spreading from the port to the buildings along the waterfront. Some ancient writers claim that these flames engulfed warehouses where scrolls were stored, and possibly even reached the main library itself. This is the version of the story you often see in movies: a single, catastrophic event that wiped out centuries of knowledge in a single night. But is it true? Many modern historians are skeptical. While it's likely that some scrolls were lost in the fire at the port warehouses, there's little evidence to suggest the main library building was destroyed. In fact, scholars continued to work and write in Alexandria for centuries after Caesar's visit. So, while Caesar's fire may have dealt a blow, it wasn't the final knockout punch. It explains part of the mystery, but not the whole story. The library survived, but it was wounded. This leads us to another, much less dramatic idea. What if the library wasn't destroyed in a single, fiery blaze? What if it simply faded away? Instead of one big disaster, imagine a slow, painful decline over hundreds of years. This theory suggests that as the Roman Empire gained more influence over Egypt, funding for the library began to dwindle. The political climate became unstable, patronage for scholars and scribes dried up. The focus shifted from intellectual pursuit to political power struggles. Think of it like a massive digital archive that stops receiving updates and maintenance. Over time, the scrolls, made of fragile papyrus, would have decayed. Without a dedicated team of scribes to copy and preserve them, they would crumble into dust. Scholars, no longer supported, would have moved to other cities, taking their knowledge with them. The library wouldn't have exploded, it would have slowly become obsolete, a ghost of its former self. This theory feels more realistic, more human. It's a story of neglect, not a single act of destruction. But again, it doesn't quite explain why the entire institution seems to vanish from the historical record. Let's fast forward a few centuries to the year 391 CE. By this time, the Roman Empire had adopted Christianity as its state religion. In Alexandria, a new conflict was brewing between the rising Christian population and the followers of traditional pagan beliefs. The Serapeum, a magnificent temple dedicated to the Greco-Egyptian god Serapis, became a focal point of this tension. This temple was not just a place of worship. It was also known as the Daughter Library and was said to house a significant collection of scrolls, possibly overflow from the main library. Under the decree of Emperor Theodosius, a Christian mob, led by the Patriarch of Alexandria, marched on the Serapeum and destroyed it. For many, this event marks the true end of the Library of Alexandria. The destruction of this sister library was a symbolic and physical blow, representing the end of the old pagan world of learning and the beginning of a new era. But even this is debated. Some historians argue that the Serapeum held only a fraction of the original collection, and that by this time, the main library was already a shell of its former glory. The mystery deepens. There's one more controversial theory we need to address. Some older accounts claim that the library met its final end during the Arab conquest of Egypt in the 7th century. The story goes that the conquering general asked the caliph what to do with the books. The reply was supposedly that if the books agreed with the Quran, they were redundant, and if they disagreed, they were heretical, so they should be destroyed either way. The scrolls were then said to have been used as fuel to heat the city's bathhouses. However, almost all modern historians agree that this story is a myth. It was likely fabricated centuries later for political reasons. There is no contemporary evidence to support it. In fact, the opposite is true. Scholars during the Islamic Golden Age were instrumental in preserving and translating thousands of ancient Greek and Roman texts on science, medicine, and philosophy. They revered ancient knowledge, they didn't burn it. So, we can safely put this theory to rest. So, where does that leave us? When we piece all the evidence together, a much more complex and fascinating picture emerges. It seems there was no single culprit, no one moment of destruction. The Library of Alexandria was likely lost through a series of unfortunate events, a death by 1,000 cuts. It was a combination of political conflicts, accidental fires, shifting religious ideologies, economic decline, and simple, slow neglect. The library didn't vanish in one night of fire and fury. It faded away, piece by piece, over the course of 500 years. And in a way, that's what makes this mystery so compelling. There's no single villain to blame, no final, dramatic moment. There is only the messy, complicated, and often frustrating story of human history, with its conflicts, its changing priorities, and its countless missing pieces. But here's the most important part: even though the physical library is gone, its spirit is not. The knowledge it housed was not entirely lost. Many of the most important works were copied and disseminated throughout the ancient world before the library's final decline. They were preserved in Constantinople, translated by Arab scholars in Baghdad, and eventually made their way back to Europe, fueling the Renaissance. The legacy of the Library of Alexandria lives on in every library, every university, and every laboratory today. It lives on in our collective human quest for understanding. It's a powerful reminder that knowledge is our most precious resource, but it's also incredibly fragile. It needs to be protected, shared, and passed on. The story of its loss isn't just a historical mystery, it's a timeless lesson for all of us. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this calm and curious look at history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Mystery Learner for more adventures into the world's greatest puzzles. Until next time, stay curious.